Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Paradise Preview. I'm here with Mr. Graham Wilson of Beyond the Waves as we look ahead to Celtic's game against Helsinki in the UEFA Champions League qualifier. So at the weekend, Celtic were unlucky to get a 1-1 draw against Inter Milan, conceding a goal in the 88th minute after a fantastic first half performance which seen us score a 20-yard volley from Chris Commons. What do you think of the game, Graham?
Yeah, absolutely beautiful goal there taken by Chris Commons. Unfortunately, he picked up an injury in the second half. It looks like he's doubtful for this tie coming up against Helsinki. A lot more possession in this game as compared to the previous week against Ajax. We took care of the ball when we had it. Much more movement, quick movement away from the ball as well. And I thought Victor Wanyama absolutely dominated the middle of the park, which was crucial. Obviously, Inter played many of their first-team players, which was a shock to us both, I would imagine. Wesley Sneijder, obviously one of the most prolific playmakers in Europe. I mean, maybe he's lost the step in the past couple of years, but still dangerous nonetheless. Victor Wanyama didn't look out of place whatsoever, really controlled the pace of the game, both by shielding the back four as well as breaking up any sort of advances that Inter would put together and then redistributing back to our attacking players. Now, obviously, we had Georgios Samaras and Chris Commons playing in sort of that cutting-in wide midfield role with Anthony Stokes, who also went out with an injury. It looks like he is perhaps a doubt for Wednesday, but not really sure there. And, of course, Gary Hooper. What did you think in contrast to, obviously, against the Ajax game or even the Norwich game, in terms of the progress that we've made? Do you feel more confident that we're ready to go up against this Helsinki side after what we saw against Inter?
Yeah, I was very pleased against our game against Inter Milan. We were tight at the back and we pressed for the ball very well, and we did manage to get forward when we could, and I wouldn't say we took our chances great, but we did take our chances sort of well, and really forced Handanovic to have a good game, which he did, obviously, because he is a real good goalkeeper. And Commons made the breakthrough with a fantastic goal from outside the box. I just thought that we could have maybe got another one in the first half, but as I said, Handanovic was just on top of his game, and several players had really good games. Samaras, Victor Wanyama, and Commons is obviously the notable ones. Who else would you think had a real good game against Inter Milan?
Well, I'd like to highlight Michael Lustig. I mean, obviously, coming into the beginning of the game, when you saw Lustig up there, and you had to assume that he was going to be a center half, it was, just like, oh God, he seems a bit out of his element, a bit out of his depth, perhaps at right back, at least so far with Celtic, and now he's slotting in at center half. But just like we saw with Charlie Mulgrew, he comes in at center half and has a bit of an outcoming, if you will, where he really slotted into the side, and with that protection from Victor Wanyama just in front of him, it seemed as though he was able to feel his way into the game, and he did many of the simple things quite well, which is exactly what you want from your central defender, especially early on in the game. So I'm going to be looking ahead to perhaps some of those early SPL ties to see if Michael Lustig does slot back in there at that center half position, especially considering we are a bit thin there at the moment without any purchases coming in at center half. You mentioned, obviously we were a bit hard done by not to get the result. We let in a late goal, but, with us going down to 10 men with, obviously the injury to Chris Commons, after that point, I didn't really expect too much from the players. I mean, I think that there was sort of a stigma that went over all of the players. Like, let's just get this game over with and get out of here without anybody else picking up an injury. I'm not really too concerned with it. And especially, considering the opposition that we're going up against. I mean, this is a Helsinki side that, just picked up a loss in their domestic league this past weekend against the aptly named Hanka. What do we know about this Helsinki team that we're going up against? They seem a bit stingy with giving up goals, especially in the early going, no?
Yeah, definitely. They are basically the best side in the Finnish league over the past few years. They've won 3 titles in a row, last season being one of their best, at least since 1990. Although in Europe they haven't really been that great. Typically when I've came up against what I'd call Pot D teams, teams that are usually the fourth pick in Champions League groups, they've not done very well. They lost Partizan Belgrade in 2010 to 2011. They're beat 5-1 by them in aggregate. They're beat by Pesticus 6-0 in aggregate in the Europa League same year. They'll beat 3-1 in aggregate by Dynamo Zagreb, and they'll beat 3-6 on aggregate to Schalke, both of them being last season. So typically, when they come to our team, maybe a step down from us or maybe the same grade, they typically suffer a loss.
Yeah, and like we were just talking about there, where they do have a history of just completely tonking competition that's several notches below. I mean, obviously we saw against the Icelandic competition that they just went up against the 9-1 aggregate. I believe against Bangor City, a couple of years ago there was a 13-0 or an 11-0 rather aggregate score there as well. But when they do come up against more formidable competition, they seem to sort of regress back. Now, and in 19 games played so far, they have 8 clean sheets, but they're very good at home, and then when they get away from home, they're just extremely shaky. And typically, they score all of their. They score over half of their goals after the 60th minute. So this isn't a team that's going to come out with loads of firepower and just try and just bang down the doors in the early goings, so to speak. We've talked about this in the lead up where Celtic typically have some maybe less than steady moments in the early going. And it's absolutely vital, those first 20 minutes, to just get bedded in and just sort of feel our way into the game, not make any silly mistakes, and allow the players to settle the nerves and maintain some confidence and get something going. But it definitely seems as though this is a more defensive side. I would imagine, especially coming to Celtic Park in a formidable atmosphere that's going to be present certainly at Celtic Park on Wednesday. They're going to look to have 10 men behind the ball and just essentially park the bus. With that being said, how do we set out to cut them open? Because it's not going to be an easy task to try and score. We're going to need to score goals. We're also going to need to keep a clean sheet. But how are we going to keep that? How are we going to cut them open, rather?
Well, I think it's essential that at home we don't get another sort of Sion result. A kind of stiff 0-0. I think it's essential that we at least get one goal. Although I would prefer getting 2 or 3. As we've seen, Celtic played them in the 2000-2001 UEFA Cup. We beat them 2-0 at Celtic Park, but away from home we lost 2-0 in a normal time, and then we got a goal in extra time to go through to the next leg. So history has said that 2 goals wasn't even typically enough to beat them in full time over the 2 legs. So I think we really need to go attacking, but at the same time we have to make sure that we don't concede any of the dodgy goals from free kicks or set pieces or quick counter attacks. So I think definitely a 4-4-2 could be on the cards, but there's an injury worry about Stokes.
Yeah, absolutely. Stokes is definitely not confirmed as to whether or not he's even going to be available. In that situation, I mean, we've seen Mohamed Bangura get some more playing time in this preseason. Is this a situation where you just throw Bangura in for this tie, or would you bring up Tony Watt? I mean, obviously, Tony Watt has shown, in the run-in during last season, he's shown some explosive sparks, some capability there. Do you bring him in on such an important game, or do you bring in Bangura, who after chance really hasn't shown us anything? I think that's going to be a pivotal decision if Stokes isn't available.
Yeah, definitely. Tony Watt has been quite productive in pre-season so far, but the only thing I could say about Tony Watt is he hasn't really got experience at this kind of level in the game. I'm not saying Vili Bangura has as well, but I think Bangura has played teams sort of on the level of Helsinki, and I have seen some, kind of sparks in them. It just kind of lacks that conviction and confidence, to really just get into the right positions at the right time. He just really needs to make that breakthrough. I would obviously prefer Stokes because he has more European experience and he did very, very well against Rennes at home. But if it comes to it, I would maybe give Bangor a shot.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, obviously Tony Watt has much more upside. We're still waiting for Mohamed Bangor to even get on the scoring sheet, but fingers crossed that Anthony Stokes is going to be available. Otherwise, I think that the team, for the most part, picks itself. I mean, Georgie Samaras is an automatic for me, as well as Chris Commons going down. I can see James Forrest slotting right in there in that versatile number 10 role. It's almost like a false 10, if you will, where he's cutting in from the right. He can play more of a central role. He does have a rocket shot on him that he can take advantage of some space outside the box. I'd love to see more of that taking place. Gary Hooper is a given, and hopefully, as we mentioned, Stokesy. A bit of uncertainty in terms of the rest of the midfield. I mean, Joe Ledley, for me, you can't drop him at this point. Scott Brown was rested over the weekend, and now. Obviously, with him being the captain of the side, he's going to need to find some sort of spot in the team. The question then becomes, do you put Victor Wanyama at center half? Do you play more of a 3-5-2? I like Victor Wanyama in the center of the park, just in front of the back four, because that gives you a lot of flexibility. You can play a 3-5-2 in attack where Wanyama would slide back to the center in between two of the center halves, and you can get a bit more attacking. And that can obviously delve back into a 4-4-2 diamond, if you will, where Wanyama's more of a holder. I think, though, in this circumstance, you're going to have Wanyama and Mulgrew back at the center half positions. That way you can get Scott Brown and Joe Ledley in the center of the park. Obviously, the fullbacks are going to pick themselves. Adam Matthews, Emilio Ezagiri, and, of course, Fraser Forster. What are your thoughts in terms of the starting 11 and sort of tactical flexibility there?
My worry about the formation is really the layout that we go. Technically, I think we're better with a 4-5-1 as the players that we've got available, because obviously Chris Commons is on form, Samaras is on form, and Forrest has looked very fit so far. So if you're going to put the three players in, then you need to really drop a striker and play you need to play five men in the midfield. But Nielanen did play Commons behind Hooper against Inter Milan, which was quite interesting. So I would say that Nielanen might go for 4-5-1, or if he's, I think it would be a little bit of a risk taking a 3-5-2 in Europe, especially if what we've seen against Ajax.
I would agree.
It didn't go well against Ajax at all.
Yeah.
He has tested it in pre-season, so I don't know what kind of conclusion he's made on it. So I don't know whether to go with a 4-4-2 or 4-5-1. I'd say if Stokes isn't 100% fit, then I'd definitely start off with a 4-5-1 and have Commons just sitting behind Hooper with Samaras and Forrest on the wings, Mulgrew and Victor Wanyama at the back with Joe Ledley and either Scott Brown or Kyle in the middle.
Yeah, no question. And even the you mentioned the tactical formation for that Milan game, or the Inter game. I think that for large stretches of the game we saw a bit of a 4-1-4-1. Where there was a sitting midfielder that sat right in front of the back four, and then you had sort of that link up player in between the midfield bank, if you will, and the striker. So, I think James Forrest, if Commons isn't ready to go, with the injury that he picked up, I think Forrest can slot in that particular role as well and exploit and hopefully open up some space in between the banks, because it seems as though Helsinki's going to try and keep it tight and maybe, try and either stifle us like what happened with Sion, where I think they would love to be able to get out of Celtic Park with a 0-0. Or maybe even nick a goal themselves. So it's absolutely vital, again, that we can keep a clean sheet. And I mean, the ideal situation would be get 2 to 3 goals, and I think that would really settle the nerves. Any thought around the predictions, scoreline? What are you thinking with this?
I'm going to predict a 2-0 Helsinki are going to sit back and really just try to keep a clean sheet. Maybe have a brisk counter attack, see if they can nick a goal, which could maybe seal the leg for them if we lost 1-0 at home. So I'm going to go for 2-0.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-0 as well. I can't see us having many opportunities on the break. I can't see Helsinki being, adventurous at all, in terms of getting the ball into our half of the field. With that being said, set pieces are going to be absolutely crucial. I could see a Charlie Mulgrew free kick for a goal, as well as maybe just some link up between Gary Hooper and maybe Giorgio Samaras to free him up, exploit some of that open space that Georgie likes to open up down that left-hand side, and Gary Hooper gets on the score sheet for Mabe. 2-0, and with that result, fingers crossed, we can go into the second leg in Helsinki with a lot of confidence going forward.
Okay, great stuff. So this has been another episode of Paradise Preview, and this week we're going to have a special outro of a little project that I'm working on.
Jinky Magic. As Jinky weaved his magic in and out with outrageous trickery, darting around about and in and out the tangled legs and socks of blue, they really had no clue. We rejoiced and voiced it too. The low centre of gravity from streets of Tanner Baugh. In areas of poverty, these skills and raw talents do emerge, and on the verge of immortality, they shine through, directed by such men of legend. No more so than against those mortal suns in blue, he jinked his way to reach the top. The world inhaled and held those breaths until the dazzled mazy runs, undribbled, journalists penned and scribbled, amazement to this very day. Drooling over witness to this magician who showed through. Uncanny. He specialised in taking urine samples, leaving others simply depressed and blue. No toilet bricks when Jinky ran at you. He may be gone, he may be past, but remembered with a passion new. His skills in common decency and gentlemanly ways renew, each day for everyone to savour. As to his statue we all pay homage. His time here spent entertaining his skill, his art, his love. His life was meant to lesson learn. All who stand in awe, those that wore that ghastly shade, can only appreciate that man. He chased that ball into and through, that hue of shallow blue, with no defence save but capitulation. What we witnessed was folklore, and oh so true. Still we compare him with the stuff of dreams, always looking for our Jinky, it seems. Always will, for there are few that wear our colours as well, with that ball stuck on foot like glue, as your Jinky.